Hello, everyone. We are tuning in here again Thursday afternoon and Friday morning, respectively, because we have Barbara Ann in the US and Andrea Marie here in Australia. And we thought we'd jump on and have a little chat today. Well, I did, and Barb's just waiting for me to get right in there. But this topic of if you were asked, who are you? What would your response be? What would your initial response be? And I actually experienced this, Barb. I think I've told you, I think we've had a conversation about how I did a silent retreat, a 7-day silent retreat, which most people laugh at when I tell them that I went to a silent retreat. However, there was a lot of dialogue. It just wasn't just it wasn't just conversation. It was like processes. And the question that continually got repeated day in, day out was, tell me who you are. And we had to respond to that. And it's so interesting to watch the layers just begin to melt away the more you sit with and have to keep kind of diving into, well, who are we? Because for the most part, when I maybe think or sit with this, or even with other people, a lot of what we do is on the top surface.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I'm curious as to what people can discover if we go a little deeper than that. So let's kick this off with, so Barb, who are you?
Yeah, but I'm going to kick it back to you because you started this with that retreat.
Yeah.
And so I'm interested. Tell me more about it. You talk about the layers and how things, we keep going deeper. Tell me about it for you. What happened there?
Oh, okay. Well, we actually weren't allowed to. I had just got remarried, so it was only a couple of months. It was kind of like got married, said, here's your 2 stepsons, and then took off for a week. So that was, I passed the point where he could annul the marriage. so I guess I took off to find myself maybe, or to just, I'm not sure. It just seemed like a really good idea. But we weren't allowed to have any form of identification. So we weren't allowed to wear wedding rings. We weren't allowed to wear watches even to know what time it was. We were not allowed to say who we were or anything like that. There was no, I was Andrea as the kind of like the divine being that was born. And that was it. There was nothing else, no other labels. And we had different topics each day, but the process that we did mainly was called a dyad, which is, this is where you did get to talk, I guess. But you sat knee to knee with somebody. There was a group of us, obviously, but you sat knee to knee and you looked into each other's eyes. And I think it was 5 minutes, or maybe it was 2 minutes. I can't remember, but there was a specific time and the bell would ring. And if it were you and I, Barb, I would look into your eyes and I would say, tell me who you are. And then you had the 2 minutes to respond and say whatever you needed to say. As the space holder, I was not allowed to show any, I wasn't allowed to raise my eyebrows. I wasn't allowed to smile. I wasn't allowed to cry. I was not allowed to show any
Response?
Thank you. That word was really challenging for me to find just then. But yeah, I wasn't allowed to respond in any way apart from holding the safe space, and that was it. And then the bell would go and we would swap over. And what happened?
Say words then?
Yeah, so if you were to ask me, so basically what would happen, someone would say, tell me who you are. And you swapped partners the whole time, but tell me who you are. And it was so interesting to watch how the initial response. So if you just asked me that, like on day one, I'd be like, I'm Andrea, I'm just remarried, I've got 2 boys, I'm widowed, I'm studying to be a teacher. Like I'd go through what I do in life. And then gradually it was literally like an onion being laid, just peeling it away. You peel off all of that doing stuff. You peel off all of these labels and these identities. And then you get deep down into I'm a feeling being. Like it was astounding in the fact that like part of what happened for me was I was able to really truly recognize what unconditional love was there, because I had situations where I went into people in my life after my husband passed away, and why I felt the way I did about them, but maybe I didn't feel that in other relationships. And it became very obvious that that was unconditional love that they showed me. There was no pressure on me to do anything in particular, but just to be held safe by those people. And all of these things, Barb, just when we get beneath the what do I do in life and begin to discover how I be, and the feelings of being who we are, it's really interesting and exciting and peaceful, and like, yeah. So it was totally a wild ride, because we had no contact with the outside world at all. So yeah, so it
So
wasn't silent, but not silent really.
sure. So in there, Andrea, what like give us some specific examples. I'm like, so if you ask who I am, like I might say I'm courageous, I'm kind. Did you get to things like that, or what came up? I know you.
So so no, it was more what happened was when you strip away what you do in life, you begin to see a lot more clearly your belief systems around who you are. And it was very therapeutic for me in terms of excuse me, I guess each each thing that sort of happens in life can add a new label. So for me, wearing the label of widow and what I was meant to do as a widow, and being able to strip that away and begin to recognize that I am a deeply loving, compassionate, empathetic, like courageous woman.
Hmm.
And yet the pressure of how to do my widowhood meant that I had a lot of stories that weren't true. And it allowed me to begin to strip those things away. And the role as mother, like for me, the journey of being a mum to two little boys that will never know their dad has been a hard burden to bear. And for a long time, Barb, I really felt like the wrong person had died, because my husband was so rock solid. He was so sure of himself. He would have just got the job done, and he wouldn't have worried about, am I stuffing them up? What do I do here? How do I do this? How do I keep her memory a lot like, because he was just a lot more comfortable in his own skin. So beginning to recognize that a lot of the discomfort of who I am comes from these myths in our mind. And that's what we get in underneath and begin to see, who are we,
Hmm.
is not the myths of our mind, is not the roles that we play. It's the way that our heart beats. It's the
Yeah.
way that our soul speaks. And that to me is game changing.
Yeah, I love that, Andrea. I mean, that's really cool because you're right. So often when we're asked, who are we? You're right. The first initial thing is, I'm retired, I'm a grandma, I'm a mom, those kinds of things. And, but that doesn't tell you who I am. I love the exercise that they had you do. And then I've done something similar to that, but maybe in a different way. And that might not be similar, but I feel like I want to talk about it. So we're going to
So
talk about
that's what we're here for. Go for it.
it. So when you talked about it, if you and I were to look into each other's eyes. So I've done this before, and we look into each other's eyes without saying anything. And then I hear about you. and I hear more of who you are. And, we've talked about this before about looking in the mirror
Mm.
and how it's uncomfortable at first and you might laugh and you see imperfections or whatever. So you can imagine sitting with a person. I mean, you did it, so you know what it's like. The beginning stages of that is kind of awkward, and but if you sit there long enough, and when we say long enough, it doesn't take that long, a minute of sitting in silence and looking into someone else's eyes, and you can start hearing things about them. And again, I'm not talking about always audible voice, just you feel things, that knowing within you about them. And man, it leads to such compassion to see someone in a different way than their title. I've
Mm.
done this with like executive corporate people, and that falls away. What they do falls away, and you just see them as this person, and how they are, or how they're hurting, or how they're happy, or it is such a cool thing to do. So I just wanted to bring that up, in that anybody listening to us could do that with someone. Do it with a child, do it with your spouse, do it with a friend, and just
And
hear
the
what you.
thing is, like with that, Barb, as well, when you first started to talk about that, that was some of the most challenging things that showed up, because we weren't allowed to speak to each other, but we were allowed to speak to the facilitators. And there are a lot of people that were challenged by not being able to respond to the person, to not be able to, I don't think we realize how much our body language
Mm,
shows somebody that you are forming a conclusion or an opinion or a judgment or a whatever it is about what they're sharing. Because people were sharing big stuff. Like when you get in underneath our masks and how we keep it together so we look like we're doing okay, and you begin to crack some of that, there's some really vulnerable stuff that comes up. And to literally sit there and hear people's pain and hear their vulnerability and their suffering, and not be able to respond in a certain way, and yet the safety, like that's the number one thing. And that's why I love what we do, Barb, because that is probably, I don't know if intoxicating is the right word, but you know what I mean. Like it's the thing that just feels so good as a space holder, is when you know that someone feels safe enough
yes,
to meet themselves.
yes.
Mhm.
Yeah,
There's
and you're right, Andrea, to create that space for someone, or for someone to create that for you. And so, yeah, our words, we didn't exchange words. We just felt. But you're right, there would be a response. Like sometimes you might start crying, and but a lot of times that crying was love, in
yeah,
a
yeah,
in a
in a
very deep,
different form, yeah.
like your souls connect. I don't know. They hear eyes are the windows of the soul. And when I started doing this, I was like, wow, it's really powerful. And but you're right, in that place of someone not responding and someone not trying to take your pain away. Oh, it's okay. Like, no, just hear me, just see me,
Mm,
just see me. Am I seen? And am I, like, right now I can start crying about it. Like, am I seen? Is it okay just to be me without the labels? That's what we're talking about today, without the labels of I'm this, I'm that, and what I do. But
and the thing with that, the added thing to that I feel is that with those labels, there's then expectations, isn't
mhm,
there? Like that
anytime,
maybe we place on ourselves, maybe we've been placed on by the outside world, but that label, then we form our own opinion and belief of how that must be done. And like that was some of the pain that I needed to shift through. It's some of the reason I feel so free with our life choice to live a different way, to try life a different way, because I feel like there's less of this is the way that I need to parent. This is the way I need to do things. Because I had a lot of noise and expectations that I placed on myself based on a mother of boys that lost their dad. Rightly or wrongly, that is how my journey has gone. You know, then you add in remarried and as happy as ever, and well, what does that look like, and what's the expectation now? Like, when we can really step through or go beneath, or however you, I don't care, dance, whatever, however you want to do it, but literally begin to go deeper, to going back to our absolute innocence of, well, when we were born, we weren't married. You know, like, yes, okay, we came in as a daughter or a son based on your gender and things like that, and automatically you're starting to have labels put on you, but they just get more and more and more. And yet, for me, I feel like in a lot of ways that stifles the true essence of our being.
Yeah. So today our conversation about who are you is it is for each of us to go in and sometimes I say, who do I want to be? Who am I and how do I show up? And you're so right, Andrea. Taking off the mask is vulnerable. And we've talked about vulnerability before, and that can be scary, and it can be, putting yourself out there. But can we go inside enough to know who we are, who we want to be, that we can show up like that and be the best version of ourselves for ourselves and everyone else? And when I say best, I don't even like using that word, I guess, because that means there's like a hierarchy or something, like this is better than good or something, but just I just be free. Maybe free is a better word. Free to be me. And am I comfortable enough?
Sorry. There's one of my programs that I read was called Free to Be Me. Anyway, keep going. But that's, I mean, that's the ultimate thing, isn't it? Like that, the whole, that free to be me, that inner freedom and that peace that we often talk about really is about giving yourself permission and having the strength to meet yourself. Like we both discussed before in different ways how obviously I was in the dyad with somebody and the space was held, and you've done that as well. And yet we both know, I think we both know that, like, one of the greatest gifts, but what feels totally unnerving for me in particular as well, is to be able to hold that space for yourself, that to look into that mirror above, to literally not have another person that witnesses us. Are we brave enough to witness it ourselves? And are we brave enough to see? And if there's things that who do we want to be? Like, knowing that who we are is already enough is really, really important. Like, that we talk about that all the time. As you are in this moment, do you recognize that you are enough?
Yeah.
And then from that place, knowing that you can choose.
Yeah. And I love the word bravery, to be brave enough and to have strength and courage, and the reason to push through that stuff is the freedom on the other side of it. The freedom that leads to joy and peace and gratitude for so much around you. And it's just a freedom that is use the word intoxicating again.
Yeah.
It's the greatest feeling I have ever had when I'm in that. Do you stay there all the time? Is it an arrival No, I mean, there's different situations and different places we go and people we're around. But the more you're aware of your mask and the more that you step into being you, it's so cool. And I believe it's the greatest gift you can give people around you,
Yeah.
that to be you and to be a person that allows others to be themselves is huge.
Well, that's so important as well, isn't it? It comes back to the point before, is that like that tends to be the ripple effect in a lot of ways, is that, when we can be okay with us and who we really are, then it's like you just automatically almost give people permission to be them, because
Yes.
who you are is not based on them anymore. Like that's what I find a lot, is that a lot of who I am is based on who you think I am. And that in the dyad, when I was talking about that, there was to be no response and you are to be like a blank canvas, is primarily for that, is
Mm.
so that the person that is going through the process does not, the process is not interfered with by the perception of somebody else, because perceptions are individual. And there's so much power in that. There's so much power in, is it easy? I'm going to come back and say this all the time, Barb. Like, no, I don't think it's easy. Personally, for me, I don't think it's easy all the time to just, who am I? Oh, yes, I'm courageous, I'm brave, I'm vulnerable, I'm this. Like, life happens and we can forget sometimes, but it's the remembering that is so important, that at any point we can choose to
Yeah.
come back and remember.
Yeah. And
And
right or wrong and then not remembering. It's just opportunities to bring you back to who do I want to be? Do I want to be scared here or do I want to be courageous? And because there's always the, the, the feeling on the other side of courage is amazing.
yeah. And
So that we both
um,
go both ways.
pardon?
We both know both sides. That,
Yeah, absolutely. And
I mean,
there was a point that dropped into my mind and it's dropped straight back out again. So we'll just move right ahead from there. But it's that's what it was. I was reflecting yesterday. I was writing a piece yesterday and I was reflecting on how the outside world like can be whatever it's going to be without our permission. Like if our circumstances right now don't prove that point, that I guess if who we are is based on what we do and things out there, like, our family, our friends, our job, our career, our education, all of those things, like any of those things can change whether we want them to or not. It's just the way the world is. It's how it works. The one thing is how we feel on the inside and who we know we are can only change with our permission.
yes. Yes.
And even if it feels involuntary, well, I mean, I'm not deliberately thinking that I'm useless at that. It's just, I just feel useless at that. It's still a choice.
Mm-hmm.
It's still a choice. And it's okay to not know how to choose to follow the truth that is in underneath all of the stories and the masks and the deceptions, but it's still a choice, which is kind of cool when you think about it, because I mean, it's the ultimate power.
That's what the word I was just going to use is like taking your power back. And how do I want to feel? I'm feeling useless at that. I might be useless at that, but how I feel about that, does that attack my identity? That means I'm a no good person? That's a big thing, that because the fact might be I'm not very good at that, but
Yeah.
how I define myself because of that is something that we do get to choose. And so there's that thing of, if you don't like how you feel, you do get to change how you feel.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
And to me, that's like one of the most important things is to really surround yourself with people that are going to enable you to be honest, to be able to choose and that whole tread gently. That we've spoken about that tread gently, as in it's not a matter of waking up today and thinking I'm magnificent and everything is totally fine. Like I think life runs in cycles and it runs in different ways at different times, and it's okay to say I want to change how I feel. I'm just not sure how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And the number one thing is for me, what was hugely important was to ensure that I had safe environments for me to get to the point of feeling safe within myself. And that's still a journey. But it's hard to feel safe within yourself if different environments are not really nourishing of that. And that's not to say that it's their responsibility, but I think it can make our journey more challenging.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think on that one, Barb? Because I know that you're big on, it's very much about us and who we are. But for me personally, I definitely feel like our environment can either hinder or enhance our ability to feel safe within ourselves at times.
Well, don't misunderstand my strength in that, Andrea, and that is part of my thinking that it's me. It's because I get to decide what environments I'm going to be in. I decide where I place myself. How long I stay someplace, all of that. Like an environment might happen. Do I want to stay there?
Yeah.
I get to choose that. I get to choose what I put myself in. That does bring it back to us. And yeah, I do find people that are safe and surround myself with that and be in those kind of environments. And
because
yeah.
it feels good. Like when we boil it down, it really is about what feels good. Like what thoughts that we have about ourselves feel good, what interactions feel good. And the reality is that we're allowed to feel good. Fancy that.
The more it feels good, the better it feels. And so it is. That's a draw.
It's like a magnet, isn't it? Like the energy of feeling good attracts feeling good.
Mm-hmm.
The energy of being true to yourself attracts being true to yourself.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
there's something really alluring, I believe. Like you can feel it. Like you can, well, I can. I don't know about you, but I can. You can feel when you know that people have a sense of self, like they're centered. And that doesn't necessarily mean that their life is amazing and everything's like working out. But even if it's not working out, they're working it out.
Mm-hmm.
And
you can feel it. Everybody has an energy to them. You can walk in, you and I can be together and somebody can walk in the room that's angry. You can feel it. And so, yes, that what you're talking about, somebody who has self-awareness of their worth and their value, you can absolutely feel that. And it is attractive.
And the thing,
impact, that's one of my sayings, attract to impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it comes back to what you were saying before. Sorry. Go.
We're always doing it, whether we attract something we don't like, if we're being something we don't like, that's kind of what we attract. And that's the impact, I guess is more what I'm saying. We impact, you've all been around somebody that's like puts everyone the needles or something, like, wow.
Yeah.
Yes. What were you going to say? I'm sorry.
That's a really good question. I don't know. No, it was oh my goodness, it slipped my mind, but it was about I wanted to come back to a point that you made before. Oh, in terms of that place of center, and you can feel it in people's energy, and it's kind of like the difference between someone being able to say, I'm useless at that, but not I'm useless.
Right.
That honesty of, yeah, I'm not so good at that, but that doesn't change who I am. Like,
Yes.
you know, that there's that sureness and honesty and that self-acceptance of, I know what I am good at and I know what I'm not good at, but I know who I am underneath the good and the, you know, not that it's good or bad, but you know what I mean? Like, we're not all out there nailing every element of our life, but how much that plagues our identity and the truth of who we are, that's an energy. You can feel that. So,
yeah.
beautiful. But yeah. So I'm wondering, Bar, I would really love to sign off today with anybody we've got a couple of people that have tuned in. So thank you so much for being here, and anybody that watches the playback. But maybe a little opportunity to go away from this session and literally sit with, like, who am I? And allow yourself maybe the space to hear, like, maybe not audible, but that feeling of, and it's not something that you do, it's not a role that you play, it's not something that you have, it's in underneath that, like, who are you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and see how it feels more than anything with what you hear. Because if it doesn't feel good, probably not your truth.
Yes, and that's a really good thing to say, Andrea. If it doesn't feel good, it's not your truth. But who are you? And if you're like me, you usually start crying because that's the question that changed my life.
Yeah. And if you're like me, you'll probably go and dance to some music. I always feel like when I get into that place, I'm like high jive and like lots of energy. Got to pump it out, go dancing on the beach or something like that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we hope that everybody has a fabulous week, and we will be same time, same place next week. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.